We're going to move on now with some business headlines with Brian Quinn. Hello there, Brian.
Okay.
And you're starting us off with news of what some people are saying could shape up to be a bit of a trade war between the United States and China.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. The U.S. has launched a formal investigation into Chinese policies on intellectual property. America estimating the economic losses from counterfeit consumer goods, pirated software, and trade secret theft at nearly $600 billion per year. On Friday, the Trump administration said it would be investigating reports that the Chinese government uses investment in American firms as a method to access proprietary technologies. The so-called Section 301 investigation could result in the U.S. imposing punitive tariffs on Chinese products within a year, and that is raising fears of a trade war. Ousted Trump advisor Steve Bannon said in a recent interview that the U.S. is already in a trade war with China. China says it's ready to respond if new tariffs are put in place.
If you collect new taxes and increase the cost of Chinese export companies, the American buyers also face an increase in costs, and this could lead to a higher default risk. Also, if such negative impact lasts longer, our Chinese exporters will need to seek new markets and more international business.
We're going to turn now to Germany. Brian, the government there making a push to help recently arrived migrants to try and get into the job market.
Yeah, well, the German elections are coming up in September. Chancellor Angela Merkel eager to show that her decision to open Germany's borders to migrants 2 years ago was good for the country. To that end, the state has instituted a number of programs to ensure that recent arrivals to Germany are well integrated into society with the skills necessary to succeed in the labor force. Josh Vardy reports.
Germany has welcomed more than 1 million migrants from the Middle East and Africa in the past 2 years, a decision that saw Chancellor Angela Merkel's polls plummet. Now, in the run-up to elections in September, the government's keen to show it has a strategy in place to get migrants off welfare and into one of the 1.1 million vacant jobs on offer across the country. Since August 2016, integration courses have been mandatory for all refugees and asylum seekers.
The challenges in getting refugees into employment are certainly that they need to speak German to a good enough level that they can pass professional training qualifications. Taking on the bureaucratic hurdles can also be difficult. For employers to know where they need to apply for what permission, who decides on what, who they can turn to for advice. That's why we need these supporting structures.
There are signs this support has been working. Over 200,000 migrants from the Middle East and North Africa were employed in May, a boost of over 20,000 from April. German unemployment is at its lowest since 1990 and has seen 7 straight years of growth. However, an ageing population and a falling birth rate means that the country is increasingly in need of able workers. The government says it's determined not to make the same mistakes it did 50 years ago when hundreds of thousands of Turkish workers were invited to fill labour shortages. They were given manual jobs, but little help learning the language or new skills.
All right, let's get a check on the latest market action. How are things looking today?
Well, Asian index is mixed in Monday trading. Geopolitical tensions between the U.S. and North Korea continuing to weigh on the Kospi in Seoul as U.S. South Korea joint military drills get underway. Hong Kong's Hang Seng boosted by strong gains at Chinese state-owned wireless provider China Unicom following regulator approval of a $12 billion ownership reform deal there. Japan's Nikkei index sliding around 0.3% as automakers and tech stocks lost ground there today. Well, let's take a look at some more of today's top business headlines. The first round of negotiations on the North American Free Trade Agreement has wrapped in Washington, D.C. The talks exposed significant differences between the U.S. and its counterparts, Canada and Mexico, particularly over the manufacturing origin of auto parts. Negotiators had hoped to conclude a new agreement before 2018 elections in the U.S. and Mexico. Analysts say that timetable may be unrealistic. Goldman Sachs has received approval to trade equities in Saudi Arabia. The U.S. investment bank joins a growing number of Western financial institutions operating in the kingdom. The Saudis have been loosening restrictions on foreign capital ahead of a planned public stock offering for the country's oil giant, Saudi Aramco. They're also seeking to attract more foreign investment to reduce dependence on oil revenues. And Infosys has approved a plan to buy back $2 billion worth of its own stock. The Indian IT giant says it will repurchase 113 million shares, returning cash to investors at a nearly 18% premium. The move comes after the resignation of CEO Vishal Sikka last week following an ongoing dispute with the company's founders that saw Infosys shares lose nearly 10% of their value.
Right, just time for one final business news story before we tell Brian to go walkies. This is an intentional pun. People playing the stock market are finding one sector where there are some big returns being unleashed.
Yes, that's right. Pet stocks consistently beating the market over the past year. Bloomberg
Stocks.
pet
We're
stocks.
talking dogs, cats, hamsters, that kind of thing.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes, but serious financial stuff here. Bloomberg reporting that the Pet Passion Index, a stock tracker by Motif Investing, up 19% since 1 year ago. If you compare that with the S&P 500, which has been doing pretty well in its own right, that's only up 8.5%. So the pet stocks are really tearing it up. Pet owners in the U.S. expected to spend $69 billion on their furry friends this year. That's up from $60 billion in 2015. And part of that is due to an improving economy in the States, enabling more discretionary spending. But analysts pointing to another factor, millennials putting off having kids, getting pets instead.
And why not?
It's a
Look
good
how
call
lovely
in my
they are.
book, I think so.
Go down your local pet shelter and adopt a pet.
Adopt, don't shop. That's what
Exactly. Thanks very much. Brian Quinn there with the pet and business news for you. We're going to wrap things up there. Be back in a couple of minutes' time.